All right, Ben, how are you?
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you. How are
Excellent.
you?
I'm great. I'm great. I appreciate you taking this call, especially in your car. And
Yeah,
uh,
and I should be pulling in any minute now. I'm just driving to work, but I don't have to start until an hour. So, yeah.
Perfect, perfect. And where are you?
So I am in Denver, Colorado, South Denver. The Denver Tech Center is where I work.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I appreciate you jumping on. So we're very passionate about helping homeowners become long-term investors, especially people that, like yourself, lived in a house, maybe didn't buy it to rent it necessarily, end
Yeah.
up kind of taking that leap. Tell us, what year did you buy your property in Pacific Beach?
Yeah, absolutely. So I lived in San Diego for about 6 years, and then I moved to Orange County. But to answer your question, I bought it in January of 2015.
Okay, excellent. You lived in the property, right?
I did. So I knew nothing about, real estate or rentals. My parents were never into renting homes or anything like that. And I thought, well, I know that I'd like to buy a house instead of spending money on renting. I could spend the same amount roughly into a mortgage, into something I would own. So that was the first, my first steps into real estate.
Okay, perfect. So this was a one bedroom, one bath condo, East Pacific Beach.
Yep.
And what did you pay for it? Do you remember?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love numbers. So I paid 200. It was listed for 229.9. And again, I didn't know anything about real estate. I know it was sitting on the market for about 60 days or so. And so I negotiated down to 227.
Got it. Okay, perfect. So 227K in 2015. And then what type of mortgage did you get?
It was an all cash offer. So unfortunately, my dad had passed away a few years prior. And so he owned a home. I sold his home and then bought a home, bought that condo. So there was no mortgage. It was a cash offer, which now I realize I probably could have had a better deal on the property because that was an all cash offer. And I think back then we waived the contingencies. And so now looking back, I think I could have got it for a better price. But all in all, it worked out.
Sure, sure. Okay, excellent. And then what made you decide to rent it out?
I was single back then, and then in the meantime, so I lived in it 16 or 17 months, and then I met someone, and she wanted a two-bedroom. So I thought, well, let's look at two bedrooms, and we found a two-bedroom in the Mission Beach area. And so we moved, and I thought that's when I reached out to you back then. I thought, well, let's see what this thing could rent for, because I don't want to sell it because I really liked it. I was emotionally attached to it, and because that was my first property, and so I thought, well, let's rent it out. And yeah, that's when I reached out to you.
Got it. Okay. And so you became a client in 2016. Do you remember why you hired a property manager? Everyone has a different reason of like what they
Oh
value
yeah,
and why to do that.
absolutely. So my priority is peace of mind. I very much value my time, and so to me, paying 10% is a bargain as opposed to getting phone calls and and obviously you guys know what you're doing. I don't. I don't know how to screen a tenant. I don't know how to fix a toilet. I don't have those relationships with contractors and plumbers and whatnot. And so to me, if I can have a professional and that's your field of expertise and knowledge, well, to me, paying 10% is well worth it. So peace of mind.
Perfect. That makes a lot of sense. And so it was a while ago, I don't know, 7 years ago now, or give or take. Do you happen to remember what that process of hiring someone looked like? Like, were we the first person you called and hired us, or did you
Right.
interview?
No, none at all. So I've analogy. I've always played sports, growing up, and I run a lot. So I've run a few, like 4 marathons. So it takes a lot of discipline. So I think I can translate that into, anything you do in life. So I definitely did a lot of research. I remember talking to two other property managers before I hired you, before I even talked to you. And so to me, it's, how long it takes for someone to return your phone call. How long does it take someone to respond to your email, if they even do, right? Because more than half of them don't even respond to your email. So that's a red flag, right? And so, how clear is your website? And so all these little factors that, set you guys apart or any contractors or any craft that you have. So I did my due diligence. I did a lot of Google research talked to a few people, and you had a much smaller team back then. So congrats on expanding, by the way.
Thank you.
And so just the responsiveness and the passion that you had, I felt that was really genuine. There was nothing fake about it. It just seemed right. It sat right with me because I'm a pretty genuine guy. I'd rather, be honest and transparent. I think it's very, very important to me. And obviously being responsive as well. Because of all that, yeah, I hired you. But yeah, I definitely looked before. It was not just like, hey, let's call Steve and yeah, I'll just hire you. No, I talked to more people before you.
Got it. So that's great. So basically, you're looking for the responsiveness. You kind of talked to a few companies. You kind of felt a connection to our company and kind of what we stood for and kind of how we communicated a little bit. And so that's really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Communication is key. I mean, especially nowadays, like you have your phone on you all the time, and you have like access to your emails, like you have your phone, your computer in your pocket all the time. So, if you typically don't respond within 48 hours, clearly you've seen my message or my email. So there's no reason nowadays if you're not responsive within like 24 to 48 hours. To me personally, that's a bit of a red flag.
Got it. Yeah, definitely. Okay, excellent. So bought in 2015, 227, lived in it, enjoyed it, got together with someone, wanted to get another place, but you emotionally, so it wasn't even so much you thought this property would, make you a ton of money, or it was like you kind of just liked the property and you wanted to keep it. So you started renting it out. So you eventually sold it. You just sold it 2023, right? It actually just closed.
Yeah, just a week ago.
Okay, a week ago. And I think the sale price was 505.
Correct.
Okay. So 505. So you're a numbers guy, that's somewhere around 300K. So what did you do with the proceeds?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm doing, and before I get into that, just pure numbers. I ran the numbers before this because I wanted to come prepared to this interview. So 227, sold it for 505. That's a 221% profit. In the meantime, all these 6.5 years that I didn't live in it, I netted like pure cash flow, meaning after paying the HOAs, property taxes, maintenance and repairs, I netted $700 a month, okay? Times 12 months, times 6.5 years, that's $55,000.
Nice.
So that's to me, that's compound interest. That beats the stock market. That's like compound interest on steroids, right? And so that's awesome. So I have the proceeds in escrow right now, or with a 1031 exchange company. And so now I'm looking more locally in this market. I guess California is amazing, but the taxes and everything are really high. And I think with that kind of money that I can put down, I can make even more money, more cash flow. And Denver, some pockets of Denver are really in a high appreciation market, have been for the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I'm looking at, greater cash flow and another, 7, 8, 10 years down the road, hoping to, have great appreciation.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also closer. I mean, it's where you are. So there's a comfort in kind of investing and diversifying into some properties where you are. So that makes sense. So, what did you learn over the course of those 7 years, I guess, renting your property out?
Oh man, a lot of things. Again, I never even thought of, investing in real estate. Again, I bought the property in the first place because I wanted a home. I knew that owning was, to me at least, better than renting, because why, although I didn't have a mortgage on it, why would I rent something where even if I had a mortgage, I would pay roughly the same thing if I put 20% down to something I don't own and make someone else rich, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how much I knew. So I started getting acquainted with the podcast, Bigger Pockets. So I'm a big fan of Bigger Pocket podcast. I bought Brendan Turner's book, The Power of Real Estate Investing, listened to more podcasts, read more books. I'm a big fan of Ramit Sethi as well. And so I thought, well, that thing is good, and Robert Kiyosaki. So how to use other people's money and leverage that to where you can create wealth in the long term, right? So whatever I do, I typically think long term. So I don't think 2 years down the road. It's more like 15, 20 years down the road. And
Mhm.
so, and learn how to ask not ask the $10 questions, but the $10,000 questions, So I don't gamble. I don't do any sport betting or anything like that. I don't do crypto because I don't understand it. And so I thought, well, that's worked really well, right? Like I'm making money, I'm cash flowing. I was still in San Diego back then. Then I moved to Orange County. You guys, again, took care of the property that was like headache free for the 8 years or 7 years you managed it. So I'm like, wow, this is great. So then I've learned that building a team is very important. So find and do your due diligence. So find a great property manager that can be honest and transparent and have integrity. Same thing with your agent. Find a great agent that can really, work for you. Find a great lender and a very good team of contractors, right? Like a reliable contractor and plumber and whatever you need, right? And so make sure your property manager have those connections. So that building a team is something that I learned that was very, very important. I have bought in the past 2 years, I have bought 3 properties, 2 condos and 1 townhome. So again, getting the ball rolling, and that's another lesson that I learned, getting the ball rolling and taking that first step is the scariest part and it's the most difficult part. But then once you see that, well, once you do it, it's like, well, okay, I got my system in place. I got my property manager. I got my lender, my agent, my contractors. Well, let's try to do it again, right? It's working so far. So let's go for another one. So I bought another property and then I bought another one and another one. And now I'm up and now I own 5 properties. So I have 4 rentals, and 1 primary residence. And now I'm thinking I'm 38. So I'm like, wow, if I had started this 10 years ago, I would be in a much better place now. So don't be afraid. I would say, don't be afraid to start. That's definitely a very good building a team. Just jump in. I know it's scary, but just do it, because then if you don't do it, then you'll have regrets. I'm like, oh, what if I had done this? Well, it's better failing and learning from your failures than not doing anything at all. And like looking back on your life when you're 70 years
Right.
old and you're like, oh shoot, well, I wish I'd done this. I wish I'd traveled to China or like run a marathon or, like tried like this super fine dining restaurant, and I never did any of this. And now I regret it. So,
Exactly. Or 4 marathons, right?
right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. No, that's super helpful, Ben. And I appreciate you sharing your story because you're
Of
like the
course.
poster child for someone who wanted peace of mind and was willing to pay to get a team to, set that up for them, take care of the stuff that you maybe weren't the best at or wasn't the highest use of your time. You also thought long term. You're also willing to learn and grow. And so something we're really passionate about, especially over the last few years of Good Life, is helping people with like a simple strategy of just like never selling a home, considering to never sell a home you live in again. And the reason is that simple strategy for a lot of people who aren't as sophisticated with numbers or able to chase yield or want to chase yield, it just can set them up for long-term success. The cool thing about what you did, and a lot of times what people don't do, is the common thing is I need a new home, so I'm going to sell my home. And yeah, sometimes you need the money and sometimes that makes sense, but a lot of times it doesn't. And, but people just think that way. And so if they are willing to step into maybe a little uncertainty, rent that home. And then what you did, so some people just rent that home for life and that's great. But what you did is you actually took the money and 1031 avoided taxes, are going to buy some other property. Whereas sometimes people think, oh, well, I'm only going to rent my home for 2 years so I can keep that deduction with like the homeowner exemption, which is important if you need the money. But there's also this whole other world where, hey, if you want to build assets long term, okay, maybe you don't own this particular property for the rest of your life, but you take that money and you make a commitment to being a rental owner to build assets for yourself long term.
Absolutely. And again, that goes into again my discipline. I'm not smarter than the average. Like I'm just like not any smarter than anybody else. I'm just average really. And so it's not difficult. It just takes, the difficult part is that you have to be disciplined. That's the only thing. It's pretty boring. It's like all my friends or coworkers, not all, but a lot of them are like, oh, like I bet this much on that game and I gave, and I won $600, or like, oh, I did crypto and like that went up, like, I made like $500 overnight. I'm like, well, over the past 12 months, how much have you, like, are you in the positive or have you lost money? And 80% of them are like, oh, I'm down like $3,000. I'm like, so really, it's that instant dopamine hit, that instant gratification that, I don't know. I've never been like that, and maybe it's a cultural thing because I grew up in Europe, and my parents were really conservative with money, so maybe that's part of the reason. But I think delayed gratification is very important. I still, I have all these properties, but I still drive like an old beat up Prius, right?
Yeah.
And people make fun of me for it. I'm like, well, you can laugh all you want, right? But and I don't tell them like what I own, but I'm like, well, it's reliable. I've had it, like, it's had like 130,000 miles on it, and it's great. It costs me nothing. It doesn't cost me any gas. It's like really cheap in insurance and everything. Like, again, the mindset, and that's another third lesson that I've learned over the past 7 years. I think I've switched my mindset into, okay, try to accumulate and create long-term wealth for myself, for my children, and down the line, and I love experiences. I'm not a very material person. I mean, I can be sometimes, but like, for example, I just came back from France. I took my fiance. She'd never been to Europe. We were able to stay in France for 2 weeks, had amazing meals, stayed at amazing hotels. Back in March, she turned 40, so I took her to Hawaii. She didn't know where we were going. So things like that to me is way more gratifying and gives me way more joy than having a nice car. But I mean, it's not better or worse. It's just different. That works for me.
Right.
So that's me. Some people might think it's a waste of money, but that's what works for me. That's what makes me happy.
Beautiful. Well, yeah, we're on the same page there. And, great story of wealth creation, transforming kind of from homeowner to investor, providing a great home for people in San Diego for a long time and now in Colorado. So, Ben, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure working with you, and I'll definitely stay in touch, I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again. You guys have been great. As I said at the beginning, you really did a phenomenal job, with my property and on my side as a homeowner and as a client of you made the whole process for 7 years just like so easy and pain-free and really enjoyable to talk to you guys. And, same with Jesse, your recommendation, at the Greenhouse Group. Super nice guy, super knowledgeable, but making all the information really easy to digest, which was, really a pleasure to work with as well.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Ben.
Yeah.
Hey,
absolutely.
have a good Friday. Best luck, and have a good wedding.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. And congrats on you have what, 1 or 2 children now?
Yeah, a 4-year-old son, and hopefully maybe some more. We'll see. But yeah,
Awesome.
my wife and I are here. We're in PB. Life's good. Good life.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, congrats again on your growth of your company. That's awesome.
Thank you so much. And hey, reach out anytime. Let's stay connected.
I will. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ben. Take care.
All right.